also like to point out that these are just placeholder buttons. We can work, our artists very hard, and they've given us a lot of great art, but just not had the time to give us all the other buttons that we needed. Devin mentioned something about a steampunk design, or kind of an art style. Sam will get into a lot more depth about this, where the characters came from and how they came about, and I'll let him discuss that now.
Well, the best thing about me getting into the art style is that I had nothing to do with the art style. That's exactly the way I wanted it. When I took it upon myself to be head designer of this game, and everybody listened to me for some reason. So everybody, liked the idea. Brandon had mentioned that we had no idea all these undergrads were going to be getting together, and that's kind of a lie. Like, we kind of talked about working together, but only half of us. Some of us, like Dan, whatever. But so we had talked about what kind of game we might want to make for 427 should we be in a team, and with a little bit of discussion, but mostly we wanted to have an arena combat game. We felt that was the simplest game design that would be fun, while also, most importantly, feasible. Nothing with 20 trillion levels, just kids and people fighting each other and see who's not dead. So the best thing about just having a concept like that, rather than having an artistic bias, what I like to call an artistic or an aesthetic bias when you're designing, you can just say, well, I created archetypes of characters that would be played, and more specifically, I created psychographic profiles of people that would be playing certain kinds of entities that would be fighting. They had no sort of artistic representation. They didn't have to be a knight or a wizard or a cowboy. They're just blank. And therefore, people with actual artistic ability could just make whatever they want. That would fit parameters of, like, I just need an attack that goes this far. You know what I mean? And would hit that hard. So if somebody can bring up the character selection over here. Therefore, I'll introduce you all to the psychographic profiles. They were not my idea. They're based off of my favorite game designer and writer's idea, a guy named Mark Rosewater. And he's the lead designer of a very popular card game. And as a marketing strategy, he divided the people that played his games into 3 different people. The guy Timmy, the guy Johnny, and the guy Spike. And I adapted this into what would be a video game, a fighting game, which makes it a little bit different. But in short, without looking at his picture, we pretend it's just a blank slate. Think of a person, think of a kid mostly. Timmy represents the kind of person that just really wants to have fun playing a video game and wants to beat people's face in terms of the fighting game. He just wants to hit you really hard and say boom, headshot, all that kind of stuff. He's in it for the fun, he's in it for the experience. So one representation would be, a character that is very simple to play with, but incredibly effective on execution. His moves are straightforward, they don't have much complexity, they're pretty easy to predict, and they kill you in about 2 hits. So be very careful around Timmy. Johnny is the creative player. He wants to show how better he is than you by being smarter than you. He wants to outsmart you, he wants to trick you, and when he beats you, he just loves to explain how he beat you and why he beat you. X led to Y, blah, blah, blah. You were too stupid to, do counter me, So he plays a lot of mind games. He has a lot of fake outs, he lays traps. He can slow you down and pull kinds of tricks and that kind of stuff. So he's the creative player. Spike is the prick. He just wants to win no matter what. He's the person, that the other people would consider cheating, cheat, but he said, I don't care, I win. So he focuses on picking whatever's the most efficient. His things hit really quickly, have very good priority over other things and stuff like that. In general, because of this design philosophy, Spike, in a perfect world where people didn't make mistakes when playing video games, everybody would want to beat him. But since people make mistakes, he has the least room for error. So, simply translated, he dies really quickly, and he doesn't deal much damage per hit. He has the least reward per risk. Whereas Timmy, because of his simplicity, is the opposite. He has the most room for error, lots of life, and most reward per risk. He, as I said, kills you about 3 hits. The greatest thing about having these player archetypes is there was a blank slate that I gave to the artists, and they came up with, and there was no genre. They're like, what's the genre? I'm like, it's whatever y'all want it to be. Y'all do anything y'all want that could possibly fit these archetypes. And they came up with Timmy as Teddy Roosevelt with a neck arm that's a safari hunter of men. Johnny, who's this creep who sounds like a Ninja Turtles villain when he talks, and he just loves to shock you with his testicles. And Spike, I mean, he doesn't look like a bird. I mean, that's what it was, So it really fits the stuff. They came up with the steampunk genre, which is, as Brad alluded to, it's pretend like the Victorian era never died and steam power was still popular. And they had cloning devices with steam instead of good science. And and it's an alternate universe. And so it brings having a gameplay first, blank template design, a lot for great art to be made to match it. Best of both worlds. So.
Ben did our collisions. Any of the environment objects in the world you collide with. We don't want you walking through them. We don't want people hiding in them where they can ambush you. We just want a world where you collide and you can go behind the wall, but you can't go through the wall. Ben took care of that. I'm going to have him come up and talk about it.
Brandon hasn't covered much about it, but in our talked about it, but our architecture is based around having a lot of different managers taking care of all the different aspects of our game. I was mainly working on the collision manager, as he said. I wanted a collision manager that would keep track of everything you needed to check against. If there's any static objects in the world, any buildings, any walls, the collision manager should know about it and be able to handle it appropriately. Players, as well, are added to the world, and when they're added to the world, they're added to the collision manager. I wanted this so that whenever any aspect of the game needed to check for collisions for players against the world, they wouldn't have to do too much to figure it out. They would just make one or two shoot calls, and the collision manager would let you know. In the same vein, all our combat is based around projectiles. Whenever you do a punch, it's really a projectile that's going between your player and the other player. The projectile manager that's actually firing these projectiles and keeping track of them makes calls to the collision manager to figure out if a collision is happening. So whenever a projectile is fired, the projectile manager sends it into the collision manager. The collision manager lets you know whether or not it's collided with the player or the wall. And as you can see, it's pretty good.
All right, here's a little demo of just some of the attacks going off, and what you'll see is steam coming around. That's your target indicator. When you have something selected, you bring steam around, and when he does a punch, it shoots off a little particle, and that's a visual representation of the projectile. But it also has a particle emitter attached to it, and Josh is the one that worked on the particles, so I'll let him talk about it. We'll show off.
Okay. Well, as Brandon explained, each and every projectile in the game has a particle. It is a graphical representation of what we wanted it to look like, and even ones that don't have a actual effect with it, they still have particle systems attached to them. Particles are a fairly simple concept. You have a particle, which is essentially just your image you want to replicate. And in a particle editor, we're using particle accelerator, you can give it different effects. You can tell it to emit in a different way, tell it to rotate however you need it. And they all come together for very exciting visual effects. Like